melafazkan cerai. Tetapi persetujuannya itu bersyarat. Dia membuat saya berjanji jika dia bersetuju untuk menceraikan saya tidak boleh menuntut harta pencarian dan nafkah anak-anak. Jika saya teruskan juga dengan tuntutan-tuntutan tersebut selepas bercerai, dia pula akan menuntut dan merebut hak penjagaan penuh anak-anak daripada saya. Dalam keadaan yang tersepit dan terdesak pada ketika itu, saya hanya mengiyakan sahaja asalkan saya dapat keluar dari perkahwinan tersebut. Semasa lafaz cerai di hadapan hakim, hak-hak lain seperti hak harta pencarian maupun nafkah anak-anak tidak disentuh dan diputuskan oleh hakim tersebut. Hakim hanya memutuskan berkenaan perceraian kami. Saya mempunyai 3 orang anak hasil daripada perkahwinan itu. Dan kini mereka tinggal bersama saya selepas perceraian kami. Anak-anak saya masing-masing berumur 8 tahun, 6 tahun dan 2 tahun. Dari dalam perkahwinan lagi, bekas suami saya tidak pernah memberikan nafkah kepada saya dan anak-anak yang mencukupi. Saya hanya menerima sebanyak RM800 setiap bulan untuk beli barangan dapur, termasuk keperluan anak-anak kami dan nafkah saya dan lain-lain perbelanjaan rumah. Setiap bulan tidak akan pernah cukup RM800 bagi kami 5 beranak dan keperluan rumah. Suami akan sentiasa lepas tangan bagi baki yang tidak mencukupi dan saya akan terpaksa mengusahakan untuk mendapatkan duit tambahan untuk membayar bil astro, bil kukur dan lain-lain. Selepas bercerai, dia culas dalam memberi nafkah iddah saya dan setakat memberi RM6 ke RM700 bagi nafkah ketiga-tiga orang anak kami. Memangnya ini tidak mencukupi. Baru-baru ini bekas suami telah pun bernikah dan saya dapat tahu wang hantaran yang diberikan kepada isteri baru adalah sebanyak RM13,000 dan 1 gelang emas. Saya amat terkilan sedangkan keperluan anak-anak terus diabaikan. Memikirkan anak-anak yang sedang membesar dan keperluan mereka yang semakin meningkat, saya perlu menuntut nafkah anak-anak dan harta pencarian seperti rumah matrimoni kami yang kini diduduki oleh bekas suami dan sebuah kereta yang berada dalam pegangannya, yang mana saya banyak memberikan sumbangan dari segi wang dan usaha tenaga saya selama 8 tahun perkahwinan kami. Walaupun saya sudah berjaya keluar dari perkahwinan, tetapi saya terus berhadapan masalah kewangan dan dilema dalam menuntut hak nafkah anak-anak dan harta pencarian. Saya difahamkan untuk menuntut hak harta pencarian dan nafkah anak-anak, saya perlu memfailkan 2 permohonan yang berbeza dan fee guaman juga beribu bagi tiap-tiap tuntutan. Saya tidak mampu melantik peguam syari'i untuk mewakili saya dengan gaji saya sebagai operator kilang iaitu sebanyak RM1,780 sebulan sambil menyara 3 orang anak termasuk perbelanjaan bulanan. Saya tidak mampu membayar fee peguam. Walaupun saya dimaklumkan secara alternatifnya saya boleh memfailkan dan mewakili diri sendiri di Mahkamah Syariah, tetapi saya risau saya tidak dapat mewakili diri sendiri seperti seorang peguam syari'i. Manakala pihak bekas suami dan keluarga beliau pula berpendapatan tinggi dan mampu melantik peguam yang baik dan menggunakan kepakaran peguam tersebut. Saya merasa perkara ini akan memberi kelebihan kepada bekas suami untuk mengambil kesempatan memastikan saya dan anak-anak akan gagal dalam tuntutan kami. Saya juga ingin meneruskan permohonan bagi tuntutan-tuntutan nafkah dan harta pencarian dengan segera kerana bekas suami telah pun bertunang dengan perempuan lain selepas sebulan kami bercerai dan akan berkahwin tidak lama lagi. Tetapi kerana Mahkamah Syariah masih belum beroperasi sepenuhnya, saya terpaksa tangguhkan pemfailan permohonan tuntutan-tuntutan saya dari bulan April 2021 lagi. Sementara menunggu proses di mahkamah berlangsung, saya juga terpaksa berterusan menanggung perbelanjaan bulanan diri dan anak-anak secara berseorangan. Hal-hal ini amat merumitkan keadaan saya untuk menuntut hak-hak saya dan anak-anak di Mahkamah Syariah. Itu sahaja, terima kasih.
Terima kasih Saudari Airini kerana membacakan kisah Puan Nora. Sekarang saya ingin menjemput panel hakim sekiranya ada soalan.
Terima kasih Puan Airini atas perkongsian cerita Puan Nora itu. Saya ada soalan untuk Puan Airini, if you can elaborate sikit. Soalan pertama adalah apa yang Puan Airini raise dalam isu Puan Nora. Kenapakah wanita seperti Puan Nora macam seolah-olah submit kepada demands and threats of the suami? Jadi she gave up her rights in law, her right to nafkah idah, her right to hartas pencarian, the right of the children to be maintained is not something you should be fighting about, right? But what is it about the process of divorce and claims in the Sharia court that makes someone like Puan Nora so seemingly easily give up her rights? She's not happy about giving up the rights according to the testimony, but she gave those rights. So kenapakah itu berlaku dan sering berlaku?
Baik, kebanyakan daripada klien kami termasuk juga Puan Nora, selalunya mereka ini tidak sedar tentang hak mereka di bawah undang-undang. Mereka selalunya akan menganggap bahawa satu saja cara untuk mendapatkan perceraian iaitu lafaz daripada suami. Jadi mereka banyak give in kepada apa-apa syarat yang ditetapkan oleh suami sebab mereka sangka itu sahaja jalan keluar yang mereka boleh ambil.
I think this is really a sad case where actually women do have rights under the Islamic family law, but this dominant belief that cerai di tapak tangan suami makes so many Muslim women think that they have no rights in Islam when actually they do. So the other question, maybe Puan Nora boleh tak berkongsi dengan kami semua, what kind of cases that the sis Telenisa dapat, because you get hundreds of cases every year from women, all kinds of complaints. What are the major complaints that you get from women in your Telenisa clinic?
Okay, ini berdasarkan data dan statistik kami pada tahun 2020, tahun lepas. Okay, kebanyakan para isteri datang kepada kami untuk menanyakan hak mereka untuk fasa. Ini sebab kita maklum bahawa fasa ini adalah salah satu cara untuk isteri menuntut cerai jika suami enggan untuk menjatuhkan talak kepada beliau. Okay. Banyak sebab kenapa isteri-isteri ini menuntut cerai. Empat sebab utama mengapa isteri ini menuntut cerai dan menuntut fasa adalah pertamanya keganasan rumah tangga. Keduanya kerana suami memang tidak memberikan nafkah atau memberikan nafkah yang sangat sedikit. Ketiganya kecurangan dan yang keempat adalah sebab poligami dan juga faktor kewangan.
Terima kasih Airini, terima kasih juga panel hakim. Saya rasa itu saja soalan yang ditujukan kepada saudari Airini, betul? Okey, terima kasih banyak panel hakim dan terima kasih lagi Airini. Kita akan teruskan ke saksi yang seterusnya. Saksi yang seterusnya adalah saksi ke-8. Beliau juga menggunakan nama samaran dan bernama Kolon. Beliau berasal dari Sabah dan beliau akan menceritakan penindasan yang beliau alami ketika membuat aduan ke Mahkamah Anak Negeri ataupun Native Court. Beliau telah merakamkan testimoni beliau dalam bentuk video dan kita akan mainkan video tersebut sekarang.
Saya berumur 25 tahun dan mempunyai 2 orang anak perempuan, dan anak pertama berumur 4 tahun dan anak kedua berumur 1 tahun 3 bulan. Saya berkahwin dengan suami pada 30 September 2017 dan hidup bersama suami istri selama 3 tahun. Pada 28 Januari 2020 saya pulang ke kampung setelah mengetahui suami ada perempuan lain. Dan pada masa itu saya mengandung anak kedua dan melahirkan anaknya pada 12 hari bulan 8 2020. Pada bulan September 2020 saya membuat aduan di Mahkamah Anak Negeri di mana suami telah tinggalkan kami anak beranak dan tidak pernah lagi mengirim uang perbelanjaan, seterusnya membuat tuntutan cerai. Respon dari mahkamah mengarahkan saya menghubungi suami dan membawa bersama ke mahkamah untuk menyelesaikan masalah yang kami hadapi. Namun suami memberi banyak alasan bahwa tidak dapat datang untuk berjumpa untuk mengatur perceraian dan uang perbelanjaan. Saya mengetahui bahwa suami dan perempuan tersebut bekerja sama menjual barang vape, dan dalam masa yang sama suami juga bekerja di Shell Telupit. Namun saya tetap tidak menerima uang perbelanjaan tersebut.
Kami sungguh berterima kasih kepada Kolon kerana telah membuat rakaman tersebut untuk kita semua dengar. Kita teruskan, saksi yang ke-9 juga berasal dari negeri Sabah. Beliau memilih untuk tidak dinamakan, tetapi bagi testimoni ini, beliau menggunakan nama samaran iaitu Alia. Walaupun beliau memilih untuk kekal tanpa nama, beliau tetap ingin berkongsi pengalaman dan kesusahan yang beliau alami. Kita mainkan video rakaman Alia sekarang.
Sendiri dengan anak-anak 4 orang, tapi yang 1 orang sudah melanjutkan pelajaran ke U, yang 1 orang tinggal asrama, dan yang 2 orang tinggal dengan saya lah. Permulaan kisah saya ini pada tahun 2003 saya mulai diabaikan. Suami saya mulai tidak diam di rumah, dia selalu di luar. Pagi dia jalan dan malam baru dia balik. Sampailah dia kedapatan lah pada tahun 2004. Kedapatan sudah dan dia mulai tunjuk sudahlah dia punya sikap itu. Selepas itu saya balik ke rumah beliau. Selepas kami ada pergaduhan besar, saya balik ke rumah beliau. Dan di masa itu memang saya kena pukul, ada lebam sana lebam sini, dan saya balik di rumah beliau. Lepas itu
rumah bapak lah,
rumah bapak. Lepas itu selama itu saya tinggal dengan beliau, selama itu dia tidak pernah jenguk ataupun tanya kabar kah apakah, sehinggalah saya ikut saya punya abang pergi ada berapa bulan lah juga di sana. Lepas itu saya dipujuk-pujuk balik, saya pun tidak tahu apa sebab, dan saya balik sebab saya pikir anak saya mau sekolah, yang nomor 1 itu masa itu umurnya sudah mau masuk prasekolah, dan saya baliklah. Rupanya dia ada isu di situ, di mana dia pujuk saya, tanda tangan ada satu surat borang tidak tahu borang siapa, dan dia paksa, dan saya pun terpaksa juga tanda tangan, dan saya tidak tahu untuk apa. Selepas itu saya tahu rupanya dia memohon itu surat kawin dengan istrinya yang kedua tanpa pengetahuan saya. Selepas dia sudah kawin dengan perempuan itu, saya masih tinggal dengan beliau. Sampailah dia buat rumah barunya. Selama berapa tahun itu dia ada balik juga, macam seminggu sekali, itu pun sekadar kasih tengok orang kampung sajalah begitu, yang konon-kononnya dia macam bertanggung jawab lah konon. Lepas itu begitulah beberapa tahun itu, sampailah ada satu masa saya ada ikut satu seminar yang dianjurkan oleh Jewa kayak itu. Saya ada ikut itu, dan selepas itu saya terbuka hatilah untuk buat aduan dengan pihak mahkamah. Pertama saya buat aduan di mahkamah saja, tetapi bisa dibagi nasihat saja, dan itu suami pun dibagi nasihat saja. Selepas beberapa tahun itu suami tetap begitu juga, tidak adil, tidak bagi nafkah yang sepatutnya, sehinggalah pada beberapa tahun dari itu saya buat lagi aduan, dan pihak EDO terus syorkan, berbicaralah di mahkamah.
Tahun bilang
tahun berapa itu?
anak kau yang keberapa sudah itu?
Belum, ada sudah kasih Elsa itu, macam ada sudah, dia masih kecil, 2010 11 12 lah, lebih kurang begitu lah. Lebih kurang begitu sebab dia masih kecil. Dan kami dibicaralah masa itu, semua apa yang itu hakim sudah jatuhkan hukuman, dan dia iyakanlah, si suami iyakanlah, tapi balik dari perbicaraan itu sama juga, tidak juga dia bagi nafkah, dia tidak juga macam buatkan kami rumah, macam apa-apalah keperluan begitu. Dan di sana dia punya sikap pun makin teruk, dia macam tidak sudah pandai balik. Macam kira dia tidak ambil peduli sudahlah, sebab mungkin dia terasa yang dia kena bicara. Sampailah sekarang anak saya keempat pun begitu juga, lebih teruk lagi ya, apa yang dia buat. Saya rasa orang sini pun, orang kampung, orang sekeliling pun nampak perbezaannya itu begitu jauh, macam mana dia bagi kehidupan sama istri kedua, macam mana dia bagi kehidupan dengan saya sampai sekarang lah begitu.
Cuman dengan yang ugutan yang ada yang kocok
Ya, dia pernah ugut saya semasa pemanggilan perbicaraan ke itu. Ada 2 kali dia datang di rumah. Pertama dia cakap, dia ugut lah, dia bilang kalau kau tidak tarik itu panggilan perbicaraan, saya akan ceraikan, dia bilang. Cerai itu kali lah dia bilang. Lepas itu dia datang lagi begitu juga, tapi niat saya memang betul-betul mau pergi lah bicara betul-betul, sebab dia tidak macam kita mau bagi dia macam sedikit pengajaran lah, tapi tetap sama juga.
Jadi yang apa itu, yang pihak mahkamah yang di sini macam ada tindakan ada?
Itulah tidak dapat pergi buat apa itu, macam pergi update lah begitu, sebab setiap kali mau pergi pakan kah, mau pergi mana kah, memang karena jaga. Macam yang tidak payahlah kalau macam mau pergi pakan begitu, tidak payahlah, tidak urusan begitu bang.
Jadi kalau pihak mahkamah tidak antara apa-apa
tidak call, tidak apa, tidak macam surat-surat kah dihantar kah, mungkin ada tapi mungkin tidak sampai tempat saya begitu. Pihak mahkamah pun dia cakap itu laporan kan mau diantar di sebab punya area kan, tapi itulah tidak terupdate lah. Silap saya juga tidak update pergi di sana kan, tidak tahu lah sekarang kalau masih boleh update kah begitu.
Tidak tahu masih ada lagi pelaporan ke tidak kan?
Saya rasa mungkin masih disimpan mungkin, tapi harap-harap lah.
Cuma kakangan masa saja kan tidak dapat.
Itulah. Macam sekarang pun kalau macam saya mau pergi pakan, contohnya saya ada urusan begitu kan, dia banyak alasan. Dia macam saya banyak kerja, dia bilang saya ada urusan begini, nantilah dia bilang. Terus sekarang memang ada urusan lah, mau pergi di kebajikan, mau pergi renew itu apa kad. Sebenarnya dia lewat sudah dari bulan 8 lalu, tapi bila saya cakap ya nanti minggu depan sampai sekarang tidak. Tapi saya nampak salah juga pergi pakan.
Iyalah. Oke, jadi itu saja.
Terima kasih banyak Alia kerana mengambil masa dan usaha untuk merakam video tersebut dan berkongsi cerita beliau. Kita akan ada masa rehat sekarang. We will now break for 2 hours, break for lunch for 2 hours, and we will continue to listen to 6 more testimonies at 2:30 p.m. We were listening to a few videos of testimonies just now, but at 2:30 p.m., we will have witnesses who will be sharing their testimonies live. So please do come back and join us. See you at 2:30. Thank you. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Have 5 minutes before we start. We will start at 2:30 p.m. Selamat tengah hari, selamat petang semua. Kita akan bermula sebentar lagi dalam lebih kurang 5 minit. Kita akan bermula pada 2:30 petang. Hello, welcome back everyone. Selamat kembali ke Tribunal Wanita. I hope everyone is feeling refreshed after the lunch break. For those who have just joined us, welcome to the Women's Tribunal. Hello also to all those watching through our Facebook Live. Hai semua yang menonton melalui Facebook Live. Selamat datang. Okay. Earlier this morning, we had our opening ceremony and 2 rounds of witnesses' testimonies. We will now continue with the 3rd round of witnesses with 6 testimonies left today. Again, we'd like to inform you that we do provide an interpretation function in Zoom, so you may choose your preferred language. Once you select your preferred language, please make sure that you mute the original audio if you choose the interpretation. We also like to take this chance before we start with the 3rd round of witnesses. A reminder to all of our witnesses to speak slowly so that we allow some time for the interpreters to translate your testimonies. Sebagai peringatan kepada semua saksi, mohon untuk saksi semua bercakap dengan perlahan-lahan agar dapat memberi masa kepada penterjemah untuk menterjemah testimoni kamu. Terima kasih. We will now start the 3rd round of witnesses. Our 10th witness is Sophia, which is a pseudonym, and her story about her experience with a stalker. Please be advised that her description may trigger some unpleasantness. Sophia has chosen to be anonymous, and her testimony will be read by Abhinaya, the head of campaigns at the Women's Aid Organization. I now invite Abhinaya to share Sophia's testimony.
Thank you, Grazel. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Abhinaya, and I'm here to share Sophia's story. She's a survivor of stalking. I am a survivor of stalking, assault, and have not been able to put an end to my horrifying experience due to there being no protection for victims of stalking. Stalking is not a crime in Malaysia, and it is completely devastating to be a victim. I have to live in constant fear, and I worry every day that my stalker may harm me or my family. I met the perpetrator many years ago in 2007 as young students on scholarship studying abroad, and he remained an acquaintance. In 2012, we attended a rock music festival together as friends, and he tried to put his hands down my pants, but I elbowed him as I was confused about what he was trying to do in the middle of the concert crowd. 3 years ago, in August 2018, I began a relationship with him. And during this time, he gradually exhibited signs of control that intensified even after the relationship ended in early 2019. When we were together, he pressured me to share with him my past relationships and detailed sexual history. And I did so trustingly. Little did I know this information will be used against me in a scale I never imagined in his harassment. Immediately after our breakup, he sent me unsolicited pictures and messages which I ignored. In late 2019, he began calling and messaging me incessantly, asking to meet me for dinner to say a final goodbye. Hoping it would stop him from contacting and harassing me, I agreed to have dinner with him on the 27th of November 2019. After the dinner, he had asked to stay over, and I said that he could stay in my spare room. He then demanded to sleep in my room. He kept banging on my room door, and when I refused, he became violent and ended up trying to strangle me. He also physically restrained me from calling a friend. From the 27th of November to the 6th of December, the harassment via calls and text messages continued, and he had asked to come over to stay with me. He then threatened to go to my workplace and follow me home after. I was so terrified for my safety, and I asked a friend for help. On the 6th of December 2019, I made my first police report on the choking incident and also the other forms of harassment. The investigating officer offered to call him for a statement and for investigation purposes. At this point, I chose to report for documentation purposes, as I was afraid it could make his actions worse if he knew. I informed my condo's security guards to no longer allow him in the vicinity. Yet, he showed up that night of 6th December 2019 anyway, waiting outside my condominium. I arrived home after the police station visit. He harassed me with threats to call my friends and family. "Don't make me do things," he said, via message and voice notes. These threats via WhatsApp were continuous, and he persistently requested me to not be inhumane and to let him shower at my place. I was terrified that he would follow up and execute his threats if I refused, as I also had an important virtual interview to attend that same night. So I then met him at the main entrance and insisted on getting a security guard to escort us all the way upstairs and to wait with me outside of my unit while he took a shower. After waiting 15 minutes with a guard outside my house, I entered my house only to see him go through my bag and through my personal notebooks. So I angrily asked him to leave, and I messaged him after, asking him to never contact me again. However, he messaged me again on his birthday, requesting to see me, but I refused. The messages and calls continued. He would continuously and repeatedly harass me daily and ask persistent questions to inquire more about my personal life, and he would call me derogatory terms such as slut and whore. These terms will prove to be even more obscene throughout 2020 and 2021. The harassment via WhatsApp peaked on 25th December 2019, where he expressed that he would never leave me alone, and I blocked him across all my social media platforms. He then started emailing me from one fake account after another, as I kept blocking him on my various accounts. And he kept asking me to unblock him and to respond to him. Knowing full well that I am active on LinkedIn and I share a lot on my work, he began harassing me via fake LinkedIn profiles, as he couldn't reach me through other social media platforms. He even took to finding my close male friend C's Instagram profile and began bad-mouthing him on social media. In February last year, C and I went for a music show in Publica, and he followed us there. He filmed us and he uploaded this on his personal Instagram account, on his Instagram story. A month later, he starts to harass my ex-husband on Instagram in efforts to reach me, and he continued to harass me daily and message my friends about me. I launched a second covering police report on 8th of June 2020 out of fear. In July last year, the online abuse and harassment intensified and the messages became more obscene. He had created so many fake accounts using my name and my child's name to message me and my friends and my family. He even shared my private photos and bad-mouthed my family. He shared my personal details, my home address, and the places I frequent. He posted all of these on the fake profiles, along again with derogatory claims of promiscuity. It reached a point where I could not take it any longer. I was emotionally and mentally drained and living in fear constantly. Fear that he may show up out of nowhere. On 21st July 2020, a friend and I went to his house to literally beg him and his family members to stop the harassment. I have an audio recording of this meeting. All he did was laugh at me and mock me, and he did not stop harassing me. A third police report was launched after this to document this meeting. Now, between 2020 and the first half of 2021, he called me 100 to 200 times continuously from 12 a.m. to the next morning, sometimes almost every day. I had to ask my network provider to block his number and calls completely, as well as to disable my voicemail or even missed call notifications because the sight of his phone number makes me stressed. Because of this, I no longer have social media, as the threats on social media were persistent. In one message on LinkedIn, he threatened that we will suffer and die together if I do not contact him. He has also ruined my family life. He calls and harasses and sends harassments to my family. He has made my relationship with my mother very strained, as she is constantly bombarded by claims of my promiscuity. He has also threatened to ruin my career by distributing these fake claims to my employer and on our internal platforms. He keeps very close tabs on the online accounts I still have, and he uses tiny details that he observes, such as a new Spotify follower, to harass me through the ongoing emails. In June 2021, one of the emails contained information from an online internal work event I hosted, and from another event where I participated in the chat room. He quoted my words verbatim in his harassing email. I suspect that he has an informant that works with me, providing him such information. I have had to share my reality and my experience with my HR department for them to escalate the matter. Fortunately, HR took it very seriously and has warned the suspected informant, a university acquaintance of the perpetrator. In July 2021, the perpetrator ordered Grab food delivery to my place. Naturally, not knowing who had sent the delivery, I demanded details from the Grab driver and took a photo of their conversation on the app. I was so worried that he was planning to ambush me when I went down to collect the delivery at the lobby. The most maddening aspect is he just assumes he can demand whatever he wants from me. In August 2021, he emailed demanding that if I wanted the harassment to stop, I would have to meet him for sex once a week as a minimum, unblock him on all platforms, and divulge every detail about my sex and dating life ever since our relationship ended in 2019. Only then, he claims, he will promise to stop harassing me, my friends, and my family. What I'm sharing here today is a very brief timeline of all the horrid things I have had to endure over the past 2 years. My close friends and family have had a hard time as well receiving this harassment, and also from watching me be in distress over what the perpetrator has done in these 2 years. The emotional and mental impact on me has been so bad that I feel like my quality of life has completely deteriorated. I cannot rely on the law or the police for protection. In fact, when I went to the police station the first time to report, I sensed that they didn't believe me. They said, "He just can't get over you lah tu. And apa you buat kat dia?" They cannot imagine that such a thing happens. And worse, they write it off as a lover's squabble. A stack of printed evidence with obscene threats meant nothing at the police station. To them, it's merely online and does not actually hurt or harm me. Recently, in October 2021, I found out from mutual friends that he managed to be a part of my condominium's community football team. I knew he had an acquaintance who lived here and occasionally played badminton in my condominium facility. But I was shocked to see that he was part of the team. Naturally, I reached out to my condo's head of joint management committee, who is a resident here too, to express my serious safety concerns. He said that it now made sense that the perpetrator has shown a strange fondness of coming over to the condominium at every opportunity, to the extent of asking to purchase our community's t-shirt and asking to use the common facilities bathroom as he was in the area. The perpetrator is now no longer part of the team, and the committee is working with the building management to get him banned from the condominium premises entirely. I have supplied the committee with police reports and the perpetrator's details to support my plea. I am absolutely terrified, disgusted, and fearful that he is trying to find his way into my home, one of my last few remaining safe spaces. I wake up every day anticipating the emails to be worse than the day before. I have even analyzed and predicted the patterns of his harassment in order to be one step ahead in terms of mental and emotional preparation. I am no longer on social media at all, and I have to change my email addresses constantly because he tries to hack my accounts. I don't feel safe online and off. I hope this tribunal is able to bring to light and to share to everyone in Malaysia the life that survivors of stalking face. There must be so many more who go through this on a daily basis, but they have no way to speak up. It is high time we make stalking and harassment, offline and online, a crime. What if some victims don't have the support that I do? Would it drive them to further mental and emotional distress, even self-harm? We must not take this chance. The past 2 years have been hell. I have focused so much of my energy in trying to avoid him and collect as much evidence as possible to one day be able to convince the government to do something to help me and eventually end this once and for all. Even his own family is unable to stop him from harassing me. He still harasses my friends and family to this day. and constantly messages them from new accounts and new phone numbers. The messages are the same, relaying threats to me. If I don't pick up his calls or arrange a one-on-one meetup, I will never relent. I don't want to ever meet my abuser again, no matter what. Not without law enforcement or legal authorities present. Even if my reputation is on the line, and at this point, I have nothing else to lose in that regard. This criminal does not deserve any kindness from what he has done to me, my family, and my friends for over 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abhinaya, for sharing Sophia's story. I'd like to now invite the panel of judges if you have any questions or comments.
Thank you very much, Abhinaya, for narrating to us Alia's experiences and her trauma. And thank you for being with us today. We don't have a question for you today.
Thank you very much, judges, and thank you once again, Abhinaya. Moving on, the next witness, we have Ms. Putri Nuraina Balkis, witness number 11, who is an ordinary citizen who took matters into her own hands. She started a platform for girls to share their stories of harassments in schools. I'm very happy to introduce to you Ms. Putri Nuraina Balkis to share her testimony. And I'd like to remind Ms. Putri to speak slowly so that the interpreters can able to translate your testimony. Thank you. Please proceed.
All right. Good afternoon, judges. I am Putri Nuraina Balkis, the founder of Save the Schools Malaysia, a platform to empower survivors of rape culture, sexual harassment, and abuse experience in schools to speak up anonymously. I am a media executive, but education issues have been one of my strongest passions to date. I firmly believe in empowering children to know their bodily rights and autonomy, and that everyone plays a part in making schools a safer place. When I came across Ain Husniza's viral TikTok, where she shared her experience encountering rape jokes, I was seething with rage for a few days. More and more victims spoke up on Twitter too, but most were dismissed by enablers online. Misogynistic remarks came from both men and women. Prior to this, there was an uproar on the period spot checks taking places in schools, affecting only Malay Muslims. There were debates everywhere already, but the hashtag Make School a Safer Place elevated the conversation. The final straw was when a group of teachers allegedly spread the rumor that Ain is autistic. Therefore, none of her words should be taken seriously. This rumor was a combination of ableism, ignorance, dismissal, and betrayal coming from authority figures in schools. I was telling myself, maybe society needs to hear more of these stories, so they will realize that this is not a one-off social media trend, but rather deep-rooted sexism that needs to stop. So I set up a Google form and an Instagram account. I received 30 stories within the first 24 hours. Today, I received 788 submissions and platformed for 540 stories on the page. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Even I didn't foresee it will go so far. Survivors from all types of schools poured their hearts out. For many of these survivors, it was their first time disclosing, albeit anonymously, the violation and trauma that they experienced. The oldest story was from a woman in her 60s. I started collaborating with Awam to provide them these testimonies for analysis. Awam will be compiling their findings into a report and giving it to relevant stakeholders. Among Awam's findings are, number one, sexual harassment alone comprised 70% of 1,145 reported incidents of violence. Number 2, the number of sexual harassment incidents involving only female survivors was 16.6 times more than those involving only male survivors. And number 3, figures of authority in school alone took up 41.1% of all perpetrators. You may say, how do I know if these are not made up stories? But as a woman, I know it is difficult to talk about the violence in our lives. So when women share their experience, I believe them. It is a grim statistic that 1 out of 3 women have experienced violence. This data is from the UN. Given the prevalence, I accept these stories to be true, just like the Me Too movement. There is this one story where a survivor was stalked by her schoolmate who followed her home. He apparently took a bet. She was almost raped, but when the perpetrator was caught and brought to the nearest police station, she walked out freely. The next day in school, the perpetrator was there as if nothing was happened, and the entire school blamed survivor for the incident. The principal allegedly swept it all under the rug to maintain the school's reputation as one of the top 10 high schools within the region at that time. There is also a story where a female high school student was groomed into an intimate relationship by a married ustazah. When the ustazah's family knew about this, both spouse and children harassed her, called the cops on her, and threatened to take legal action against her. As a result of all this, the survivor lost her friends and later her source of income. The experience put her through multiple suicide attempts, and she's on medication for her trauma. In every 10 stories submitted, about 1 or 2 of those stories would be around period spot checks. There is one submission where the victim shared how she was humiliated in the morning assembly together with a few more female students as their periods were in sync. And they were paraded as liars by an ustazah in the school. There are a few things that I noticed from running this page. Number 1, there's a common pattern shared by these stories. Survivors who tried to seek help were dismissed by the authority, be it parents, teachers, or counselors. The victims received backlash from teachers, other students, or the entire school. Number 2, there are very few incidents where the victims were empowered by their teachers or parents, which is very worrying. There are also a lot of survivors who never talk about it at all, not even to their parents, and the platform was the first to hear their stories. Number 3, figures of authority come in multiple forms at school. It could be a teacher, the principal, hostel warden, and even school guards, van drivers, and canteen staff. Number 4, there is a tremendous lack of body autonomy among the students, as the adults always act in an authoritarian manner towards them. For example, period spot check, because unless it's proven otherwise, the students are lying. Next, the current school environment is not listening to the students enough. Most of the time, it appears that they care more for their school's reputation instead of the students' well-being. And last but not least, perpetrators get away very easily. I will continue to offer my page for survivors to share their stories so that they know that they are not alone. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Putri, for sharing your testimony. Now I'd like to ask the judges if you have any questions or comments to Ms. Putri.
Thank you very much, Putri, for being here and telling us your initiative and intervention in bringing to light the range and scope and volume of harassment, sexism, especially in schools. What you are doing is an excellent initiative, and congratulations for undertaking this. You are going to create a context in which action should be taken from the evidence that you're producing. So thank you very much for doing that. It's a wonderful initiative, and for being here with us and telling us what you've been doing. Thank you once again.
Appreciate to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shanti. Thank you all the judges, and thank you very much again, Putri. We will now move on to the witness number 12. Witness number 12 is a story of people with disabilities, or PWD. The witness will remain anonymous, and here she will be using the pseudonym Siti Nur. Siti Nur's story will be read by Anit Kaur, whom is from the Law Reform Harapan OKU group. We'll now invite Anit Kaur to share the witness testimony. We also like to request that you speak slowly so that the interpreters, this testimony will be in the form of a video, my mistake. Let us now play the video.
I am Anonymous 3. This is my testimony. I'm a patient with comorbidities stemming from a rare disease. This has been worsened by the office environment. This started about 7 years ago. Increasingly, it has affected me. Now, I am no longer fully functional. I used my limited energy reserved for work, and I am the breadwinner of my family. The medical conditions that I have impact on both my physical and mental health. I thus require close follow-up by a team of medical specialists to ensure that I'm able to function as my family's breadwinner. I am an engineer. Since 2012, I worked on designing capability development programs for the engineers in the company based on the company's capability framework. I work closely with engineering departments in the company, and I have good rapport with stakeholders in these departments. Despite the above, the department that I am in is rife with sexism and toxic positivity, as majority of the department are women, but the department's management is led by men. To differentiate the layers of management, I will use the following terms: HOD, head of department; HOU, head of unit; team leader, TL, who are all male. Co-managers, my colleagues and I, co-managers, will refer to it in this report as co-managers. Team will refer to those under our supervision who report directly to us, our direct reports. Both of us co-managers are women, while our team consists of 1 male and 5 female team members. When I started in the department, my HOU had asked me about my marital status. When he knew I was unmarried, he remarked that it should be okay for me to work long hours as I don't have a family to care for. Furthermore, I left the WhatsApp group of our department as I could not tolerate the non-stop horny takes, female bashing, and polygamy jokes. At the same time, the WhatsApp group is also used to disseminate last-minute work assignments, change in meeting venue or time bound, urgent requests from HOU or HOD. Since removing myself from the group, I have had to rely on my team to get details of the above. Most times, my team forgets to update me. I work with earphones turned up loud to avoid being bombarded with the upsetting sexist noise in the work environment. I did not think to keep screenshots of the WhatsApp messages and deleted the WhatsApp group as it had a bad triggering effect on me. Our TL, who is also an engineer, is well known for being difficult to work with due to his inability to express his ideas and to conceptually link those with the objectives of projects under his administration and administrative supervision. Both HOD and HOU directed us as co-managers to report to the above-mentioned TL as our supervisor and to babysit him in meetings, especially with the stakeholders. On many occasions, we both voiced to both HOD and HOU our frustration over working with such a direct supervisor. Each time, senior management's response to us was, suck it up and follow orders. This came from men with the power to intervene and find solutions that would not undermine staff well-being. Technically, we could have perhaps gone to a management level higher than my HOD. However, experiences and observations regarding the prevailing company behavior indicated that we women managers would likely be told to be patient and to focus instead of ensuring KPI delivery. Higher management treats women staffers as a pain. When it comes to requests for transfers, complaints, and other work opportunities. If we women push for change, the standard response is to silence us. I've experienced being overlooked for overseas postings, despite working on the project for some time, having been told by the manager of the overseas project that he needed me to be at the project location and having better qualification than a male colleague who succeeded in lobbying for the posting. Most wheeling and dealing for such opportunities happen in the smoking area or behind closed doors. Typically, most opportunities are not advertised, with information shared in a timely and transparent manner. Experience in the company has taught women employees the futility of raising issues, as no concrete action is taken, and the risk of jeopardizing career prospects. When my direct supervisor was first assigned as overall lead of our team, none of the staff members had had prior experience working directly with him. At the same time, my team had a reputation of always being overachievers. Senior management expected us women overachievers to cover for the incompetence and other failings of our male direct supervisor. So, in addition to handling our day-to-day tasks, my co-manager and I became personal assistants to our own direct supervisor. That required us as a team to work beyond the usual 40 hours per week to conduct workshops, lengthy meetings, and all the quality work that we were accustomed to undertake to meet our KPIs as well. The senior management directive to me was to accompany my direct supervisor to the many meetings that he attended, ensure that all his presentations were fact-checked by the team before he delivered them to the stakeholders, as well as to ensure delivery of team results. We, my colleague, the co-manager and I, had to defend our team members, ensure that they complete their work and support our team objectives and are spared from running around as per the male supervisor's incoherent directives. This has resulted in the stress and burnout within our team. I do feel responsible for their well-being and get distressed listening to the complaints on the extra work that we are all doing. I stay in the office until almost 8 p.m. By the time I get home, it would be 10 p.m. I'm dependent on public transport. Compliance with this directive has drained me. It is known to all the senior management that I spend time at the hospital weekly for physiotherapy and follow-up, which will eat into official work hours at the office. On average, I allocate 3 hours for one hospital visit, which includes commuting by Grab and to and fro, wait time, consult time, physio time, 1 hour session per week, and picking up medication from the pharmacy. Per week, it is usually 6 hours, and I request the time slip as per company policy. This timing for visits is dependent on the respective specialist or physiotherapist clinic time. I try as much as possible to schedule more visits to coincide with lunch hour, end of work hour. Sometimes I drag my laptop to the clinic in the hope that I can do some work while waiting. If a meeting, workshop clashes with my hospital appointments, the other co-manager will step in or we'll reschedule to a mutually suitable time. On average, each team member spends between 9 to 12 hours per week at work. I know most of my team members will at least check their emails on weekends too. This is to compensate the time lost from attending meetings, important or otherwise, to finish up actual work and we still need to carry out. I have to admit that due to my increasing depression and fatigue, I leave home late for work and I have breakfast somewhere along the way to work. At my lowest point, I went to work without taking care of my personal hygiene. I lose track of time, and I usually include my schedule in my handphone as a reminder. I go to work with a walking stick. Hence, my colleagues assume that I have unresolved medical issues, but do not understand the extent of it, how it is impacting my ability to deliver work, and why I require accommodations. I felt that the company exploited my goodwill beyond what could be reasonably expected of any staff member. It was noteworthy that no male staff member had been subjected to the same directive. With my hospital visits and the number of MCs taken, I believe that was what my HOD meant when he commented that I was not visible to other managers. I was also told to show more enthusiasm and energy as I needed to serve a good example for my team. In 2019, I found a 1-year master's program that I could afford to upgrade my knowledge and give me a break from the toxic work environment that entrapped me. I applied for unpaid study leave. My application was endorsed by 1, the company occupational health OH doctor, and 2, my HOD and HOU. This was supported thirdly by my whole team. The situation compelled me to strategically obtain the endorsement and support before I informed my direct superior of my planned leave and absence. My direct superior indicated that he might not support my leaving while the team was neck deep in work. I suggested to him potential replacements to ensure that my work would not be jeopardized by my leave. As I was trying to get endorsement for my leave, I had a chance meeting with one of the internal occupational health doctors. Since he was a doctor, I provided him with a background of my medical issues, and he suggested to me postmasters to come back and build experience within 5 years, and then resign from the company as a person with my comorbidities would be a potential target for severance. This is despite my ability to deliver my KPIs. Before leaving for my master's, I ensured I delivered all my KPIs and was eligible for a performance review. Despite that, while I was on company-approved study leave, my direct supervisor assumed that I was not eligible and did not contact me, as he was obliged to initiate a discussion on my performance review. Based on my first performance review in this new department, I was rated highly in 2018. In 2019, I expected the same, as I had ensured all KPIs were met, but my TL failed to conduct the necessary steps required by HR to ensure that I had a fair review evaluation. My TL gave me the lowest score in my team. I lodged a complaint with HR. HR mediated 2 different sessions to address my complaint, and I was blamed for not initiating my performance review since I was on unpaid leave. I was told I had not shown initiative in handling of my work, and I was unfairly blamed for my program audit results despite not being able to defend myself. HR neglected to note that the reduced visibility resulted from the unacceptable level of stress imposed on me from the additional work of backstopping a direct supervisor whose incompetence, mismanagement, and failures senior management had refused to deal with. I knew it was pointless to argue further since no change would be made to my ratings. Thus, I decided to verbally accept the reasons given, which were to be made to my ratings, which were then recorded in the grievance report, where I was allowed to disagree to the report. Despite having stakeholders complain about the TL performance, his inability to align his performance with stakeholder objectives and requirements, and not having the support of the team under his administrative responsibility, my direct supervisor was not punished. At the same time, the company was aware of positive feedback from other stakeholders that I got to work with, but that positive feedback was ignored as they were not part of the performance committee that evaluated my performance. Soon after returning to work at the end of 2020, HR and my HOD offered me a severance package, which I refused. This is a normal tactic employed by the company, especially during times of economic downturn, whereby they punish those who take prolonged leave, despite such leave being part of staff entitlement. At the same time, I lodged a complaint over my 2019 performance review. With my updated CV, I applied for a new in-house position. Until now, 8 months after my application, I have yet to be offered a new placement and am left floating within the company. Discrimination between the genders in the company is insidious. It has toxic effects and undermines our confidence in our skills. And it is often apparent only to women staff members who are subjected to it. With the economic uncertainties created by the COVID-19 pandemic, women staffers in particular feel the pressure of potential retrenchment. Quite a few have decided to resign, as juggling work and household duties has proven to be difficult. I hope my sharing will help towards improving conditions for everyone in this country. Read on behalf of Siti Noor.
Thank you, Anit Kaur, for sharing Siti Noor's story. We are now going to the witness number 13. Witness number 13 will also be using a pseudonym, as she would like to remain anonymous. For this testimony, she will be named Leslie, And Leslie's testimony will be read by Mira Samantha from the Association of Women Lawyers. Over to you, Mira.
Do you go on?
Yes, hi Mira, yes.
Hi, Crystal. Thank you very much for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll be reading this on behalf of Leslie with a pseudonym. It's about sexual harassment and abuse in the workplace. While I was working as a sports coach, I was constantly verbally harassed, bullied, and manipulated throughout my employment. The perpetrator was the employer of the sports organization. This experience caused my mental health to deteriorate to a point where it affected my everyday life and social connections. It made me reserved and scared to speak or interact with people. The events took place in 2014, and I only managed to get help in 2020 by seeing a therapist to help me cope with the trauma from this time. In a particular incident, after the training session, all my colleagues received their checks handed to them except me. When I asked for it, the perpetrator told me that he had left mine at home and that I should follow him back to get it. When I did not respond to him, he made a joke in front of my colleagues saying, "It's not like he was going to rape me." This was among the first few rape jokes he made and would continue to make during our training sessions and meetings. For each subsequent salary payment, the perpetrator would always ask me to collect my check at his house. His excuse would change. Example, he forgot it or he hadn't prepared it. However, my colleagues never seemed to have an issue with their pay and were always handed their checks after a training session. Our team meetings were always held at his house with other male colleagues. I was never told prior to my employment that the meetings would be at his house. Many of the meetings had nothing to do with me and did not require my attendance. He also constantly made me feel uncomfortable during these meetings with his remarks, asking me to eat, drink, or sleep there. I felt unsettled due to the previous rape jokes he made. The perpetrator began calling me at inappropriate hours of the day, usually around midnight. This happened around 2-3 times. The first few times, I did not answer because there was nothing urgent in our line of work. And also, I felt uncomfortable to do so. He later made remarks in front of my colleagues saying that I would not answer his calls. During one of the meetings, the team meetings, I saw the new schedule on my colleague's laptop, and I noticed that I had been taken off all the teams. I was very devastated, and I felt like I couldn't do anything. So I thought perhaps I should resign. I didn't confront the perpetrator about it because whenever he spoke about competitors or contracted workers, he would talk aggressively and badly about them. So I felt afraid that he would do the same to me. I also realized that I was being underpaid because as soon as the new coaches joined us, they could afford gym memberships, car loans, etc., which I wasn't able to afford on my own pay. The perpetrator often made a big deal out of it, saying I was offending him by not having coffee or food at his house. One day he had an outburst and he went off on me saying I was being incredibly rude and offensive by not eating or drinking at his house. He proceeded to take my own coffee mug away from me. He opened it to check if I was lying about having coffee in it. This left me deeply unsettled, and I again considered quitting. One day, after a meeting at his house, my perpetrator insisted on walking me to my car. This was really unnecessary because I would just walk out usually, and someone would open the auto gate from inside the house. When we reached the gate, he blocked my path and turned to me. He asked me, why was I not intimidated by him? Thinking that he was just making a joke, I replied saying, I didn't feel the need to feel intimidated by others. He became upset. He refused to open the gate and left without saying anything else. I had to use the smaller side of the gate to get out since the auto gate wasn't opened. Then the perpetrator began increasing my workload and giving me tasks that had nothing to do with my job. I was originally hired to coach, but suddenly asked to create media content and marketing materials. He also insisted I do these things at his house, which added to my discomfort. While I was out with some friends on my day off, the perpetrator called me on the phone. I reluctantly answered his call, and he said he had no electricity in his house, so he had gone to a nearby shops. He said he was bored and asked me to come and hang out. I told him I could not. I was with friends and quickly hung up. Once, I was sent on an assignment. But when I turned up at this place, no one was there. I called up the perpetrator to tell him. He instead told me to go to his house and have a nap in his room and to take a shower there while I was at it, since no one was at home. I told him I was going to go to a coffee shop nearby to hang out with a friend, but he kept on insisting. He then called for a meeting at his house that very afternoon. I felt afraid, and it felt like he was trying to lure me to his house. I finally emailed my resignation to the company email, and I stated the reason for my resignation was that I could no longer stand the constant harassment. Although I didn't name the perpetrator, I did allude to it. A few days later, the perpetrator replied to my email, denying that anything I wrote in the email happened. He said that since I did not raise it earlier, it did not happen. In the email, he also said that I did not perform my job properly, and he allowed that to happen. He ended it by saying that he hoped I can find a job that values me and my sanity. I found out years later that the perpetrator had gone on to blame my colleagues for my resignation, saying that it must have been one of them who harassed me. He also went on defaming me to my colleagues and possibly his friends or his contacts and acquaintances. He said that this is why women should not work in sports, as women couldn't handle pressure well, and women looked for easy ways out by claiming that they had been harassed. 2 years after leaving, I have heard from others that many other women he had interacted with had come forward with similar stories, but no action has been taken, and he is still working within the industry. Generally, my experience working in sports has been challenging. I was often the only woman working with men in their 40s and above. I was frequently excluded in discussions, nor given the opportunity to speak, had my opinions belittled, talked over, or even cut off, despite being quite experienced and knowledgeable in my sports field. One male colleague usually pestered me to go out for drinks or about my relationship status. I was not comfortable going out with him alone as he was already married, but he kept pestering me to do so. But he never asked this of my male colleagues. There was another male colleague who had many sexual assault allegations made against him by several women who had come forward with evidence. My male colleagues were generally supportive of him and even often defended his wrongdoings. They would speak of him as though he had just was put in a difficult position and would drop their conversation when I entered the room. The fact that they continued to speak positively about him, despite knowing all these allegations and evidence, made me feel deeply unsettled and uncomfortable. Male colleagues often made degrading comments about other women in sports. They often made derogatory comments, sexual remarks, sexualized their looks, and discredited the qualifications and experiences of women. For example, saying things like, she exposes her cleavage to get attention. She sleeps around to get job opportunities. I am still working in the sports industry. My present workplace is much better, a lot better, more professional, but generally, the sports industry is insensitive to women. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mira, for sharing Leslie's story. I'd like to ask now the judges, do you have any comments or any questions for Mira?
Mira, thank you so much for being here and bringing to us the experiences of Leslie as a football coach. It's much appreciated. Thank you very much for all the details and the information that has been provided through you. Thank you.
Thank you, Shanti, and thank you, panel of judges. Thank you once again, Mira. We have now reached the last two witnesses. Witness number 14 will be joining us and sharing her testimony personally. Witness number 14 is Miss Alia Effendi, who is an activist and will share about how she was harassed after speaking up and because she is a woman. Let us now hear her story. We invite Miss Alia Effendi to share her testimony. Miss Alia, please speak slowly so that the interpreters can translate the testimony. Thank you.
Hello, good afternoon, judges. So I begin my testimony. It all began on the day Muhyiddin was announced as the Prime Minister. When it was first announced, there were a lot of emotions weaving through me. As a first-time voter, I was looking forward to the promising changes that was going to happen in this country. Ultimately, this came shambling down with the change of the new government. As a Rakyat, I felt robbed knowing that our right to exercise power was taken away. I irrevocably rejected Muhyiddin as my Prime Minister in my speech. As a Malaysian, I strongly believe I had every right to express my disappointment with the backdoor government. The speech was to address my anger as a voter, to point out that power should not manifest or exist so arbitrarily for certain people, that our voices, however angry or small, should matter. The next morning, I woke up to multiple messages from friends notifying me that snippet of my speech was edited and had gone viral on Facebook. The video did not feature my full speech, but unfairly focused on the part where I questioned Siapa Muhyiddin. I did not know who filmed me at the protest or who posted the video online. My immediate concern was potential police investigation. I and some other friends with legal background combed through the video to see if what I said can be used against me or if any element of crime or defamation was present. Once I was out of fear of the police investigation, right away I was overwhelmed by the hate, violence, and insult that were directed to me on social media. It started with Facebook, but soon people managed to identify my Twitter and Instagram account, and the videos were spread to a wider network on Twitter. Among others, I was doxxed, and my private information, such as my email, my social media account, were exposed. Some had impersonated me on Facebook and Twitter by creating fake accounts to insult me. Some of my old friends started sharing information about me on social media, mostly to defame, discredit, and shame me. All this further exhibit the attack against me. Memes, parody videos, and comics were created to attack me. People actually tagged PDRM and asked for an investigation to be made against me or to have me arrested. A relatively famous artist had created a comic that illustrated a man stepping on the victim, implying that physical violence against me was legitimate. I received numerous direct messages on Facebook and Twitter from strangers, hurling abuse on my physical appearance and even threats. The attack narrative ranged from me disrespecting and betraying the Yang di-Pertuan Agong and the government to me being too emotional and acting like a deranged woman, shaming my body, my physical appearance, and accusing me as a political puppet for political parties such as DAP. The whole experience was overwhelming. I saw threats on me, my face, my body, being ridiculed online for several months. I developed severe anxiety, and it got worse when I was called in by the police for an investigation. At the time, I had already deactivated my Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram account as it got overwhelming. I isolated myself from the physical world as well as the digital world. I had to look over my shoulder every time I walked out of my home. Just days before we went to our first lockdown, I had strangers stopping me to identify me from the video. When it happened, I would usually shrug it off and told them that they got the wrong person. Months after the first attack had died down, I received another wave of attack following the vandalization of a mural featuring the Yang di-Pertuan Agong, the then Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin, Health Director General Datuk Noor Hisham Abdullah, and past President Datuk Sri Abdul Hawang, sprayed with obscene words using red paint. A CCTV recording actually showed two women vandalizing the mural actually went viral. The facial feature of the women was not clear from the CCTV, but it riled up nationalist and monarchist sentiment among the public, and there were a lot of pressure for the police to investigate or to make arrests. A few Facebook accounts started spreading disinformation by linking me as the woman who vandalized the mural. Following that, the Sabah Museum video resurfaced on Facebook and Twitter, and I was once again attacked online. Multiple police reports was also lodged against me by different conservative groups. Soon after, I received a call from police wanting to investigate me for the vandalism. Though no formal notice was issued, the police made an impression on the seriousness of the issue and that my appearance was actually mandatory. The moment I stepped into the senior police officers, the officer to me, awak bukan awak lah yang dalam CCTV tu. Which was clear that my presence there was due to unfair and unjust public pressure against me. Despite my reluctance, I actually had to share my image. I was also pressured to give out photos to the police. It took me a year to fully recover from the attack. For a long time, I felt anxious about being in the public and would oftentimes isolate myself. I developed separation anxiety and was constantly afraid of being left alone, fearing that someone may break into my home or that someone would physically assault me. I went into a social media hiatus for about 4 to 5 months. I created a different Twitter account under an anonymous name. I felt anxious wherever I had to apply for a job, fearing that the recruiters or interviews may recognize me from videos. I had to go for professional therapy for about a year to cope with my own anxiety and at my own cost. I felt that the virality of the mob attack had reduced myself and the person I am. Every inch of my body, my face, and my entirety was made into a content for the public to ridicule me. They had someone to abuse and harass for their own entertainment, and my identity was reduced as to the Sapper Muhyiddin girl or the woman who spoke against the Muhyiddin and its government. Some even made assumption that I am from a